What's going on, guys? JSGC here, back again for another Manchester City video. Today we're going to be doing my match review, match reaction and match analysis of Manchester City's 4-2 defeat in the Champions League against Paris Saint Germain. Before I do crack on with this video, make sure, like always, if you are enjoying the content, do subscribe to my channel. It is free to subscribe. Don't forget social media links. They're in the description if you want to go and follow me on my Twitter, Instagram and TikTok. Email also in the description too if you want to hit me up for any sponsorship for any videos or any general business inquiries. And also don't forget as well to leave a thumbs up on the video and do let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So let's speak about this game. Manchester City didn't really want to change too much from their win against Ipswich Town at the weekend, with Manchester City coming out 6-0 winners in that game, thinking if we can turn up and play a similar game here in Paris, then we've got every chance of scoring goals and picking up some points, maybe even picking up the win. Was very much, I think, the mentality City were heading into this game. Doku picked up an injury, so it took away a little bit of the pace that Manchester City could potentially have had in this game, which meant we went with Savinho, who didn't really do too much, forced a good save in the first half from Donnarumma. That was about it, but City really struggled in that first half to link up any real attacks. It was always just the odd few chances here and there in what was very difficult conditions in a very wet day in Paris. Made the surface very greasy, and both sides were just trying to have a couple of potluck shots in the first half to see if they could force and make something happen. Now, Manchester City decided to go with Bernardo Silva in this game ahead of Ilkay Gundogan. I think just looking for some fresh legs there, with Ilkay Gundogan getting no younger, 34 years old. I can't see him doing back-to-back games, in particular against competitive teams who like to try and attack and have the ball at the feet. So go with Bernardo Silva, who to me just looked well off the pace in this game, and because of that, Manchester City's midfield looked well off the pace too. PSG changed things up. I don't know if City were maybe a bit ill-prepared, but I spoke in my preview about expecting a 5 at the back from PSG to really allow them to try and get the likes of Nuno Mendes and Hakimi involved as much as possible, and they were really involved in that first half, causing City all kinds of problems, and eventually they did manage to grab that goal just before half-time, which was ruled out for offside by literally a knee, before Hakimi ended up putting the ball into the back of the net, and a bit of a reprieve for Manchester City, so much so that City decided to change things up going into the second half, brought Rico Lewis on for Ruben Dias, who was on a yellow card, so Josko Gvardiol went in at centre-back and Rico Lewis went on the left-hand side, and they chose to bring Jack Grealish on for Savinho, as Savinho weren't really having much of an impact. And for the first 7 minutes or so of that first half, that substitution with bringing on Jack Grealish really shook things up. He was creating and causing problems for PSG, and he was finding ways to really expose Paris Saint Germain, grabbing himself a goal with the ball ping-ponging around in the penalty area. Man City go 1-0 up, and then follow it up a couple of minutes later, again with Jack Grealish pulling the ball across, ping-ponging around, finds Erling Haaland at the back post, and Manchester City are 2-0 up with less than 40 minutes left to play in what is a must-win game for Paris Saint Germain to stay in the competition, and Manchester City needing a win to guarantee themselves in the playoffs, and potentially, if we could win next week, also to have the second leg of them playoff games at the Etihad Stadium rather than being at home in the first leg, because I always prefer to be at home for the second leg, knowing what we need to do at home rather than going in with an away match for the second leg. It puts a lot of pressure on the first leg to try and kill things off if we can. And the fact is, now we have to try and get into that position, because we have to face some facts. 3-0 up with 15 minutes remaining at home against Feyenoord, and we blew it. And we dropped 2 points. We are now 2 points in the zone which sees us drop out of Europe altogether. Not into the Europa League, we'll go out of Europe. If we don't finish in the top 24 spots, we're out of Europe by the time it hits January. And that is, quite frankly, inexcusable for Manchester City. I know that we've not got Rodri, and I know that Manchester City are needing to do a bit of a transitional period is what's needed, but at the moment we're on the same points as Dinamo Zagreb. We are currently on par with Dinamo Zagreb. That's how bad this campaign has been. Heavy defeat against Sporting CP with an awful performance, outplayed in that game and deserved nothing. But we led in that game and then chucked it all away. Juventus, away from home, 2-0. Outplayed in that second half and outplayed in this whole game to PSG. We were lucky that we had that 7-minute spell to be 2-0 up, because otherwise I could have seen PSG going on and scoring 6 or 7 goals. They outplayed us in this game. This is one of the worst performances that I've seen from Manchester City under Pep Guardiola. He had no answer at all for Luis Enrique and his tactics. He got outsmarted. Literally outsmarted by somebody who he's really good friends with. And this now leaves something for Pep Guardiola and Manchester City really to think about. Because the fact remains now, it's no longer a league table for Manchester City. The equation is crystal clear. We're now in a straight knockout. Home match against Club Brugge next Wednesday. Win that game or we are out of Europe. We're out of the Champions League and we're out of Europe unless we win that game. We win that game, we're guaranteed to go into the playoff, and we will be away from home for the second leg, for the playoff, if we can get there. And at the moment, it's looking maybe unlikely that City might be able to do that. We carry on playing the way that we've been playing in the Champions League this season and we will go out. PSG have been subpar, they've been awful, they've been atrocious in this campaign, yet they outplayed us and they're above us. We are now 7 games in on 8 points, averaging just over a point per game, which I will add, if this was under the normal league format, we would be looking at around 6 or 7 points, which is never enough to go through to the last 16 in the top 2 spots in the first place. Man City have really been subpar, and with PSG bringing on Ousmane Dembele in the second half, just ripped Manchester City to shreds, hitting the crossbar a couple of times. They had 2 offside goals. Eventually the third one was given to make it 4-2 at the end. Manchester City's defence was just at 6s and 7s, and game management, again, we're getting back to that like it was in the Brentford game and the Feyenoord game. It's coming to repeat so far this season. The game management wasn't there. You're 2-0 up, less than 40 minutes to play. You buy the 3 kicks, you slow the play down, you frustrate PSG. They've silenced the crowd, they've done the hard work. The job is 85% done. You just got to see it off. Get the job done, wrap things up. And Manchester City this season are not capable of seeing the games out unless they're playing teams who are just not very good. Flat track bullying. Manchester City go up against any half decent team and they will drop points or they will lose games and potentially be outplayed. Even against Leicester City, they had more possession than us in the first game in 2025. So this is becoming a little bit of a repeat, and it's becoming very, very concerning. I don't think any of us have been blinded by Manchester City's form that they've had so far in 2025. We know that City has just started to string some wins together and they were looking more confident. That game against Ipswich is probably the only game that I've seen in the last 3 months where I've taken some confidence away from the game, because everything else has just been incredibly subpar, and that subpar performance is back again. And I can tell you on Saturday against Chelsea, if we play subpar, we'll get beat. And if we play subpar next week against Club Brugge, we're going out of Europe. That's how serious it is now for Manchester City. Completely outplayed in this game, and it's inexcusable. It's ill-prepared, outfought, outsmarted. They've not got the quality there in the pitch to be able to compete. And Manchester City are just far away from where they used to be. And I've honestly, guys, I've never seen a drop off like this. We've gone from, in the space of 18 months, treble winners, one of the best teams ever, to a team that's now on par with Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League. That's where we're at. It's not even after 1 or 2 games. We're now 7 games in. We can't get any momentum going forward. And we are now under a heap of pressure going into next week. A heap of pressure. I mean a lot of pressure. All eyes are on Manchester City, waiting for the mistake, waiting for what they're going to consider to be the impossible, that one of the favourites for the tournament, through 8 games, go out, finishing in the bottom 12, and mingling around with the likes of Dinamo Zagreb. I'm not doing that to disrespect Dinamo Zagreb. I'm just trying to express that Dinamo Zagreb and their budget and where they're at aren't expected to compete. Manchester City are expected to be in the top 8. They're expected to be right up there as one of the best teams in Europe. They're not one of the best teams in Europe. And one of my biggest concerns is maybe we do beat Bruges next week. Maybe we go through to the playoffs. And if we have a half-decent team, we'll go out. And if we end up having a team that's maybe not got the quality that can hurt City and we end up getting to the last 16 or at any point in this competition, as soon as we go up against a competent, good team, we will go out because we're not good enough. That's the reality that we're looking at here. And the even harsher reality is we could go out next week of the Champions League and out of Europe, and we may not finish in the top 4 next season, and we may not have or see Champions League football again for another 18 months, which would be the same gap between City being treble winners and winning on that night in Istanbul to where we are now. A huge come down for Manchester City and a lot to think about for the club. A lot to think about. Concerned. Very, very concerned. And it's the performance that's causing me this concern, not the result. The result, well, it's not great, losing. We don't want to lose games. Going to Paris was always going to be difficult, in particular with the pressure that PSG needed. You saw what it meant to the players. They've shown tremendous character to be 2-0 down to come back, yet they showed the fighting spirit that City are lacking. They've not got that fighting spirit there. And the game management poor. Once Ruben Dias went off in terms of the defence, it's all over the place. For me, relying on Rico Lewis to be able to defend, physically he isn't there, he can't compete, so automatically we're struggling. Matheus Nunes isn't a right back, he can cover there when we're playing Ipswich Town. It's great when you're going up against teams that are in the relegation zone, when you're going up against world-class players in the biggest and best competition in the world. You cannot expect makeshift to do the job. It's not going to happen. It isn't and can't happen, and it won't happen. And the lessons just aren't being learned. They're not being learned. And if we go out next week, I'm going to look at the games, and I can sit here and talk about PSG and Juventus and Sporting CP. They're difficult away games. For me, it's decided on your home games. 3-0 up against Feyenoord and blowing that in 15 minutes is a result that I look at and think that's horrific. Club Brugge, if they do a job on us next week and we don't beat them, I'm going to be looking at it and saying, you're not beating Club Brugge and you're not beating Feyenoord at home. You don't really deserve to be going through to a playoff to potentially be in the last 16. You get what you deserve. You deserve to finish 25th. You deserve to go out of the Champions League, and that is the reality that we're looking at right now. And quite frankly, it is not good enough. Really isn't good enough from anybody that's involved with Manchester City. I'm not just going to sit here and name a few players and say it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault. It's a collective, it's the team's fault. The team's not being good enough. The manager's not being good enough. The club's not being good enough. They all have fallen short for one reason or another, and it is not good enough. We as fans can see it, the players and the coaches will see it and know it, but at the end of the day, the one that will be left most disappointed is, because the club's a business, it affects Manchester City's money big time through not progressing in the Champions League in terms of the prize money, the exposure, what it means to get into the Champions League next season, and going from a team that's always in quarterfinals, semi-finals, finals and winning the competition to go out at the first time of asking is going to open up serious questions amongst those that are right at the very top of the hierarchy at Manchester City, because the do-all and end-all for Manchester City is a Premier League and or a Champions League. You fail in both and you've ended up having a very, very unsuccessful season. A really unsuccessful season, and it's so disappointing that we've just started to pick up some form and a little bit of confidence and looking to get a bit of our swagger back, so to speak, and all of a sudden just pull out that disgraceful performance from this evening where they were completely outfought and outplayed right through from the very start of the game. They were not at the races. PSG embarrassed Manchester City, and the worst part is PSG just haven't been very good in the Champions League, and this big long break between December right through towards the end of January is a long time to go without playing any Champions League football, and PSG will have been thankful for that break, because in that time they've remained unbeaten, they've got tremendous confidence, and they've got that spirit where if they do go 2-0 down in a game, They don't look to dwell on that. And we've just not managed the game. You go 2-0 up, you waste time, you keep the ball as far away from your goal, you frustrate the opponents. What you don't do is allow them to score in half the deficit, because 2-0 is the most dangerous scoreline out there. Goes 2-1 a few minutes later, and all of a sudden tails are up, Man City are on the back foot, and it becomes one-way traffic again. And the only thing that PSG were lacking in the first half was a clinical touch. Dembele was giving them that clinical touch, and Barcola in the second half, and it ripped Manchester City to shreds with that makeshift defence. It was just embarrassing. Do you know what, guys? I'm done with my rant. It's just really poor. I'm getting fed up. This season, the same problems are just reoccurring. It is a season to suffer, but we face the possibility of having no success come the end of the season, and the season setting us back into next season as well, and that would be the big legacy and the knock-on effect, because it affects the transition. It stops us bringing in the players. Players don't want to play for teams who are going out of the Champions League at the first time of asking. Players don't want to play for teams who aren't in the Champions League next season. Players don't want to play for teams who don't have answers, who don't have fight, who don't want to compete. They don't. They want to play for the best, who are competing for the biggest and best trophies. We've been exactly where we've wanted to be for well over a decade, and now we're so far away from where we want to be and where we used to be. And I think we're far further away than what people think that we are. We're not just 1 or 2 signings away. We are far away. I'm talking a full transition that could go on for years here. And it's very concerning. Get your thoughts, guys, in the comments below. Do leave a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new around here. Social media links are in the description. Do go and check them out. And I'll see you all again real soon for the next video. So I've been JSGC. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope everyone is safe and well. Peace. Ciao for now.